Welcome to Goodnight, Robin, your someone to say goodnight to. I'm your host, Robin Rice. Good evening, friends. I wonder where you are and how you are. I wonder if you're alone or with family. I often wonder about you. I know some of you, but a lot of you I don't know, and a lot of you are new here. So it's kind of cool to think about who you are and where you are and why you're listening and also what you need. I think about all those things. Today in particular, I was thinking about the fact that there is a lot of grief happening in the world, and a lot of people don't really know how to do grief, if you will. I wish I didn't know how to do grief as well as I do, but I had a lot of people that I lost when I was young. And then continuing through life, I've lost a lot of people. And of course, like everyone, I want to make sure I don't lose anybody next. But that's not really possible in this life. Even if you don't lose a person, you lose some time hanging out with friends, you lose the way things were. All of those things bring about grief. And it's really important to understand the different parts of grief. Sometimes you're just in denial. You're just like, ugh, I can't believe that happened. No, it didn't happen. There's no way this is happening, right? I wonder how many people have said, I can't believe this is happening. And yet it is. And then there's also anger. Why can't I go outside? Why can't I do what I need to do? Why can't I, why doesn't everybody understand? All of those kinds of things. We get angry. And angry is just kind of part of it. It's part of grief. And then we try to bargain sometimes. We just bargain our way. Well, if I'm really, really good, then 3 days from now, everything will be better. And that doesn't really work because life doesn't bargain. Grief doesn't bargain. I think it's important now that we call grief what it is. There will be a time for acceptance, but right now there's just all kinds of different layers and levels of grief going on. And that's okay. The day that you feel completely lethargic, you want to just eat out of house and home, you want your bad foods instead of good foods, you want whatever, your binge shows, whatever it is that comforts you, that's part of grief. And it's a normal part. It's really difficult for those who are going through this and going through it alone and maybe have to work at home as well. So they don't really have a way to work through it. So I think there's, some great resources out there. I think there's some mental health resources. I think you could just Google mental health right now and you'd probably find, 100 things that are popping up. But ultimately, the beauty of grief is it shows us what we've loved, how much we care about things. And so the things that we actually aren't grieving and we don't miss, well, that's information too. If you don't miss your job, that's interesting. Might not be good in this moment, but it's interesting. If you don't miss certain people, but you do miss others, well, that tells you something. So to me, grief is very informative. I remember once in a very deep place of grief that a doctor told me, now, don't go too far with this because you can actually hurt your heart if you grieve too hard for too long. And I thought, well, gosh, it's just going to go on as long as it's going to go on. But I did realize I also had a little bit of control over, kind of how far I fell into the depths of my grief and my story. I didn't want to bypass the emotions. It was important to feel what I was feeling. But I also didn't want to do what I came to call over-honoring them. I gave them too much of my brain space. So I thought I'd talk about that tonight because I think it's something that we're collectively going through. And I think there's a lot to be gained from a grief process. There's a lot to be careful of with the grief process. And there's just a lot to be accepted with the grief process. So bargaining, anger, denial, acceptance, whatever it is that you're going through, just know it's normal. It's really normal. Anyway, wanted to share that with you tonight. I hope you have a beautiful night's sleep, as ever. Good night, my friend.